Hello, so I would just like to make some updates on the situation in Manchester, if I may. There's been a lot of statements, of course, and a lot's been happening. Um, so Roger Moore passed away yesterday, which is, if it hadn't been for this big attack, that would obviously be pretty big news. I'll just say a brief word or two, if I may, about that because and I do apologise for this because I know it's not connected to the video, but I don't want to upload a separate video for that. Roger Moore done 7 Bond films, and in my view, he brought great charm to the series. I liked a lot of his films, especially Live and Let Die. True British gent and fairly decent all round gentleman. Done a lot of good work for UNICEF. So yeah, that was sad to hear of his passing, but he was loved by many. So Manchester. Um, we know this is the worst attack since 7/7 now. What is interesting is that the threat level has been raised to critical. As I understand it, this is the first time it's happened in 10 years. And I think that would not be a decision that would be taken lightly. That indicates to me that the security services have got either a tip off or it's precautionary because there has been a large scale attack. This didn't happen after the Westminster attack, and I think the last time it happened was with the Glasgow airport attack. I watched a speech by, or a statement, I should say, from the Didsbury Mosque. There was a minute's silence held by the Imam there, and then the chairman of the mosque made a statement. Now, this is pretty significant. Apparently, the attacker Salman Abedi had some connection with this mosque. At least that's how CNN is reporting it. The chairman of the mosque suggested that media reports that he had a connection to the Manchester Islamic Centre were unfounded. So make of that what you will. Um, a lot of what we are hearing now seems protocol. Honestly, it seems protocol. Um, that stand united, that we condemn this, etc. Um, I really think this needs to be explored. So they held a minute's silence. That's great. Curiously, they said they would, and he was very adamant about this. They would not take any immediate questions, and they didn't. That's a little bit. I don't know what to make of that. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. But basically, they said they condemned the attack and came out with the protocol line that terrorists have no religion. That's not an exact quote, but that the attacker did not represent Islam. Well, um, I really think this is becoming a flawed argument. And this is why the British, generally speaking, are not vengeful, hate filled people who hate Muslims. There have unfortunately been a few retaliatory attacks. There was arson incidents at mosques in Glasgow and Oldham. Whenever an individual Muslim is targeted by some bonehead because they have heard about a terrorist outrage on the news and they want to target the nearest Muslim, I of course condemn that. But this is a fringe issue. The wider British population do not hate Muslims and they do not blame all Muslims. So the constant narrative that we hear, and Andy Burnham came out with this as well. I appreciate he's new in the job. It's a bit of a baptism of fire as Mayor of Manchester, but most people know this. They know that not all Muslims are terrorists, that you cannot judge the entire community by the actions of individuals. Incidentally, the Lone Wolf theory and the Quilliam Foundation made a point on this. He may have acted alone, but absolutely he would have known about, he would have had to get the bomb making material from someone and he would have been in connection with people. There's going to be a lot of questions about the security services. If he was in Libya recently, why was he let back in? I'm always reluctant to criticise the security services. I think they have a very, very difficult job, very complex, very long hours. And I think that we have to be grateful for the fact that they have thwarted many, many attacks that we don't know about. And it's the attacks, unfortunately, that are successful that get all the attention. But some of the narrative on this has to change because it seems almost like a protocol now. Whenever there's a big attack, wherever it would be, whether Paris, Nice, Brussels, London or Manchester or any other city that is impacted by this plague of pan-Islamism, we see the same protocol. will stand united. We all condemn terrorism. Don't blame all Muslims. But I really don't think that the responses that I don't think there is any indication of widespread anti-Muslim vigilantism. There are unfortunately incidents that happen, and that's, it's wrong. I wouldn't minimize that, but we have to at some point realize that this protocol matters less than actually doing something about this problem. So it's all very well for mosque leaders to come out with statements of solidarity and condemn the act. Anyone can condemn it. And I'm not saying they're not sincere, but there has to be a bit of soul searching within their community. So simply shaking your hands of the problem and saying this guy doesn't represent us, we want nothing to do with him, is not good enough. It's not. I understand why Muslims will want to distance themselves from these people. I totally understand that. And I understand that they feel resentful, that they may feel that they are being tarred with the same brush, but I don't think that is the case. It is simply a fact that what we are dealing with is Islamic extremism. That's what it is. And what I deeply resent and what has deeply frustrated me is the way that this is just dismissed as terrorism. I came across one guy last night that came out with the virtue signalling lines, don't blame all Muslims. This was a lunatic who done this. Minimizing ideological terrorists as lunatics is not going to address the problem. You have to understand and you have to accept that there's an ideological basis to this. So yes, they're sadistic killers, they're sociopaths, they're thugs, they're, all these things are true, but there is an ideology there. There is. They, for whatever reason, get sucked into this pan-Islamist mentality of spreading the caliphate violently, which is Islamic supremacy. So when I see mosque chairmen and so on condemning it, I think, well, that's wonderful. But the issue here is not, oh, they don't condemn it. They always do. That's fine. That's good. It's better than not condemning it. But there needs to be more than that. Anyone can condemn a terrorist attack. There needs to be action taken to expel Islamists from mosques. There needs to be action taken to ensure that Western values are not being compromised. What do I mean by that? I mean that it is unacceptable to feel that there should be violence against someone because they have decided they no longer want to consider themselves a Muslim, i.e. the violence against apostates. There needs to be scrutiny of opinions and mentalities towards, for example, blasphemy. These sort of issues are very, very important, and that goes beyond terrorism. Because terrorists, in a way, are the symptom. There is a mentality behind that is not being addressed. So, for example, there will be people that believe that apostates and blasphemers should be killed, but the same people will come out and criticize terrorist attacks. So I really think it is legitimate to ask questions because we are simply not seeing this with other religions, not in the same way. So this multicultural, politically correct cult of dismissing anybody who questions these things, who wants to take a different narrative as being a bigot or an Islamophobe is very unfortunate. People like me, who have our heads screwed on properly, know full well that most Muslims have nothing to do with this. In fact, Muslims are themselves often victims of this, particularly in the Middle East, because of the sectarianism that is going on. But that is not the issue. The issue is addressing what the ideology is. And addressing the ideology is not saying that all Muslims are bad. It's not. Nor is it being divisive. That's what I detest about the narrative that we are seeing. That's not about unifying people. That's about simply trying to ignore what the symptom, what the problem is. And it is simply not good enough. It's not going to help anyone. So I feel very frustrated by the way people respond. Of course, there will be individuals that want to hate all Muslims and deport all Muslims and take out on all Muslims. And that is unfortunate. But I believe that their mentality is fueled by ignoring the problem. The best way to deal with this is by dealing with genuinely progressive organisations such as the Quilliam Foundation, such as the British Muslims for Secular Democracy, that recognise the problem of pan-Islamism. There are other organizations, I think they don't recognize it. They simply want to wipe their hands of it and say, oh, this is just terrorism, it has no religion. This is deeply offensive to atheists, actually. I'm not an atheist, but presenting terrorism as having no religion is basically trying to exonerate religion from having an influence on this. The idea that surahs from the Quran cannot be interpreted as violence against non-believers is utter nonsense. This is always the catch line. Oh, but you're misreading it. The Islamists are misreading it. But so it's this idea that only non-terrorist Muslims therefore are understanding it the correct way. The fact of the matter is, if there are many people out there in the Middle East, if, and there are a lot of them, we are not talking about one or two individuals. There are thousands of people who endorse this mentality. And they believe that the progressive Muslims or moderate Muslims are the apostates. So how can you lecture outsiders and say this has nothing to do with Islam when there's this blatant sectarianism going on within Islam? What I really, really insist on is some honesty. Honesty is not divisive. Honesty is not scapegoating all Muslims. It's simply accepting that there's a problem going on here within Islam. I mean, if any religion can be interpreted that way, interpreted with the more violent, extreme, intolerant passages, but within Islam, it's being interpreted on a bigger scale in terms of it's being endorsed by jihadists. And it's all very well saying that they don't represent this, but in their mind, they do. So they absolutely believe that they are Muslims. They believe that they are the true Muslims. So how can you lecture outsiders that they don't, they don't, I'd use a football hooligan analogy, right? Football hooligans may bring their club into disrepute by acting like yobs and criminals, but they may still well be fans of the organisation. I totally understand the need to polarize people. I totally understand that. I think that's a good thing. Polarize them, but don't just say that it's got nothing to do with religion. You can even say they're interpreting this in an extreme way. This is not what it means or whatever. But instead of just saying they're nothing to do with it, challenge their mentality. I would like to see, for example, debates between Islamists who haven't resorted to terrorism and more progressive or moderate Muslims who want to challenge their mentality or their interpretation of it. Simply saying they're nothing to do with it, I don't think that's going to help because they believe that they are. I mean, we should absolutely be robust in terms of dealing with early signs of radicalization. Do believe that Islamists should be isolated in prison because would then get a situation where a shoplifter is sent in. They are put in contact. They are exposed to hate preachers or whatever, and then I really think that we need to get clever about this. It can no longer be the protocol, of people coming together. We condemn this. It's not all Muslims. Islam's got nothing to do with it, because that has not been the reaction of the British public or most of the Western public. And where there have been hate crimes happening, it's wrong. It's unfortunate, but it's because I think there is a strong sentiment out there that this problem is not being addressed. So the fringe elements, call them what you will, neo-nationalists or Muslim, anti-Muslim bigots or whatever, their mentality is that the liberal elites don't care, the mainstream don't care, they want to ignore this problem. So what I say is, let's reclaim this, let's address the problem. Those of us who don't want a divided society where, people are being attacked and targeted because of their religion. But quite frankly, it does irk me a bit that there's so much focus put on that. More so, I would say, than the victims of these atrocities. Far more so than the victims of Islamic supremacy in countries like Pakistan, victims of blasphemy laws and so on. I'm going to round it up here because I'm pushed for time. I need to travel today. I'm about to get a train Dumfries to Newcastle. So I'll round it up there. There's going to be more developments on this. There's going to be a lot more to say, but that's my take on it. Thank you for watching.